Happy New Year to you all, and we're into the start of another year and another season, which can only mean one thing, and that's catching up with Shane Gallagher from the Drowes Fishery to find out how the opening day and week went on the river. But before we hear from Shane, Tom, how was your winter break?
Good man, Dara. Happy New Year to you. Yeah, really good. Lovely Christmas. Grand and quiet. Looking forward to the new year now. But yeah, we're currently going through this our Arctic spell at the moment. So our chat, you got to rake of snow down there. We haven't got the snow yet.
Oh, we've been a couple of centimeters, and I'm just looking at here the trees. It's that frozen ice. The trees are like just covered in white now.
Yeah.
It's all you can see is just like freezing fog and ice and snow. But like probably in about 48 hours time, it's going to be about 12 degrees. Sun will be shining. We'll be getting t-shirts again. So
that's it. I see next week is promised to go up to 8 or 9 degrees. Well, the only thing what I say is, okay, we've had a week of this. It's been this last weekend now, and I really like it. I was just saying to you there beforehand. I think last winter, there was only one morning I had to scrape frost off the windscreen of the car, and as a consequence, like, it was very mild last winter. Then you look at, I'll bring the lake into play here. We'd one of the earliest mayfly hatches for a long time. Right, mayfly was well up by the last week in April. Some great fishing at the last couple of days of April, actually with Mick McShane, Mick, who's been on the show, who's down, and it's some great fishing, covering rising fish on dry maize. So, and I remember thinking, God, Jesus, it was really early. And then you hark back to why is it early? And then you just look at the previous winter, and it was incredibly mild. So I see this week, and I kind of like it. Because I think, yeah, it's more natural. We've air temperatures here now. The week it hasn't really gone above 2 or 3 degrees. I think the most it went up to 4 yesterday, but most days it's been 2 or 3 with a frost at night. The lake is low, so as a consequence of that colder temperature is going to hit that bit lower. So I just kind of like it.
Will it kind of delay things and it'll almost put things back into their normal cycle almost?
Yeah, that's what I hope for. I think it does delay things, or should we say, bring them back to, as you said, more normal cycle. The water temperature. If the water temperature is low, it slows things down. I mean, classic example. I mean, that's how you determine when a trout or a salmon egg hatches, is in the equation, the mathematical equation. The water temperature goes into it, and the higher the water temperature, the shorter the duration of it until it hatches. And so that obviously goes right through everything within within the lake environment. So, and it has a bearing as well on our fly hatches, and thereby that's why you see a really early mayfly hatch last year, and a duck fly was up by Paddy's Day last year.
So you'll be hopeful then off the back of this weather then that things will be looking
a bit more normal.
A bit more normal,
yeah. A bit more normal, because you're coming for the duck fly. You hope to be coming, getting for a day the duck fly with me. And I'm going, oh God, yeah. Because sometimes I like it after the clocks change, because you get evening fishing, and normally it's later on, and you get the egg layers returning back to the water evening time. You get a bit of dry fly fishing as well, so it spices it up.
Yeah,
and then, but then I immediately went, God, if I compare it to last year, after the clocks changed last year, the hatch was finished.
But maybe you can't now, so hopefully it'll be the way it should be. Like,
yep, hopefully it will be. So we're back to after the clocks changed there.
Back to the cycles of Jesus Christ. Talking about summer days. No, it's what I have to say. I like seeing this weather, because this is what it should. It's like I know the people, the media goes on about the weather and all that, and it is terrible for people who are out of power, and we've had no water, and I know neighbors have had no electricity and water, but it's kind of reassuring in a way. It's like, this is the seasons, this is winter. This is
what's meant to happen.
But this, for me, I don't know. The scary thing is, this is almost like this is the abnormal now. This will be like the freak. That this. You remember 2024 or 2025, the cold snap.
The big that one in 2025 where we had. It went to -2.
So it's although speaking of winter, and before we hear from Shane Gallagher from the Drowes, it's kind of like our annual catch up with Shane to hear how the Drowes is going on opening day. I did want to mention we got an email from Sean Cassidy to tell us about a new digital platform for fishing clubs in Ireland that's been set up. It's called onthewater.ie. It's a really good idea. And as Sean says, currently it's quite difficult to get angling permits. And actually, I think we got a question, do you remember, a couple of
We
months ago
did,
from
yeah.
somebody
Mm,
asking about this actual very issue.
mm.
So whether it's day tickets or memberships for the majority of clubs around the country without being directed to a hardware store or a petrol station, so, as Sean says, there's also a huge decline in the number of young anglers entering our sport, and I think there are opportunities to improve upon the existing infrastructure and make angling more accessible for everyone. So, myself and my friend Andrew Callan have built an angling specific platform called onthewater.ie for clubs to sell day tickets and memberships with features specifically designed to benefit both clubs and anglers. We believe that by opening up visibility and access to clubs throughout the country, we can improve upon the ease of access of fishing, increase protection of waterways, increase youth angling uptake, rebuild club numbers, and benefit angling tourism and local economies. So, on thewater.ie, do check it out. I have to say, it's a great initiative that Sean and Andrew have set up, and they're trying to develop there. And I think it's actually interesting. You'll hear in the conversation we talked to with Shane, where
Yeah,
Shane
yeah,
talks about the app and the licensing system and real time information. So it's actually interesting. It ties in with that. There's a real sense of
doesn't it? I
fishing
was
in
just thinking the
Ireland
exact same thing. Yeah, it
needs
really
to
does.
come
Ties
into
in.
yeah. So into the 2025th year or whatever. And
Yeah,
so,
yeah,
so it's Sean. Thanks a million for getting in touch. Everyone do check it out on thewater.e. And like I said, I think this is part of a wider conversation that's to be had about the digitalization of fishing platforms and fishing information and fishing availability in Ireland. Like in fairness, you look at what's that one in the UK, Fish Pal?
yeah,
That's very good, I have to say, for the waters in the UK, like in terms
yeah.
of
Really good, really good. They do very well on particularly if you like your salmon fishing.
yeah,
If you like your salmon fishing, look at a place in like for Scotland where it just presents what's available to you, where you can go, and what you know what waters are at. A host of information, a whole load of information on the site. Yeah, so it's a good one. So yeah, fair
yeah,
play to the guys, for grasping the initiative to do something like that here. Because as you
yeah,
said, we've been asked that question a couple of times by
yeah.
people. How do I find out, where do I go?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So look, if this might be something that'll take off and develop, so best of luck with that, lads, on the water.ie. Right, let's get back to this week's guest, Shane Gallagher. And of course, we speak to Shane pretty much every year now to find
Yeah.
out how opening day on the Drowes went. And as well as that, Shane also talks to us about the fishing season, looking ahead to 2025 and the bigger issues around salmon runs. But first, let's hear how the opening day on the Drowes went.
We're still waiting for the first one here. We had not as bad conditions as elsewhere in the country for the first week of the salmon season of 2025. This morning now it's been very frosty. The roads are treacherous, but in the previous couple of days, we've had some ground frost, but nothing like as further south in the country. So we had a smaller than normal crowd out for opening day. I think there had been weather warnings in place, and people were probably a little bit concerned about that. And maybe over the last number of seasons, as the chances of an opening day fish are probably probably slim, really, to be honest. The numbers are falling off, and people are keeping their powder dry for later on in the season, really.
Yeah, it is kind of getting harder, isn't it, to kind of entice people between whether if the weather's tough, it's hard enough as it is. But then, like you said, with the spring run, it's people are kind of saying, is it
Or to
worth
get
it?
motivated, and maybe a lot of people are, they're leaving their the first day that they go out until later, maybe into February, sometimes into March, really.
Yeah, I suppose it's a natural thing though, really, because it was always a bit of from talking to you before, it was always a bit of a more of an event of a day, really, anyway, Shane,
Yes, exactly. Yeah,
going out. But I suppose, as you say there, I suppose at the end of the day, we're all fishermen. And if you like to think you have a chance,
Yeah, absolutely. I think so.
it plays into it. But then, as you say, like a lot of us as well, we got to keep our chances. And we might have X number of days that we can get out fishing.
That's
So
right.
if
Yeah.
you want to increase your chances as well.
but wouldn't it be a shame though, to lose that ritual? That I think
Oh
and I
God, yeah, wouldn't it?
wouldn't it, like even if
Mm,
you have zero chance of catching a fish,
yeah,
it's still
yeah,
just because I know myself, Shane, when I was there a couple of years, it was for people, it was just that whole ritual symbolic thing of it's the 1st of Jan, I'm out,
Oh
dusting
yeah,
down,
yeah. Absolutely. But Definitely, it marks it's a nice way to mark the opening of the season and the first day of the year, and just get together with friends again. But if somebody turned around tomorrow and said, "Listen, if you change the opening day to the 1st of February or the 1st of March, you're going to have X more fish, or you're going to increase runs," I do it in a heartbeat. But unfortunately, it's just not as simple as that.
That's interesting. Yeah, and do you kind of question it yourself, kind of more and more as the years go on, Shane?
Well, I don't think that the anglers out. Obviously, any time you're going to be fishing for early season fresh salmon, you're going to encounter kelts, and that's going to happen on the 1st of January. It's going to happen probably on the 1st of April in a lot of places as well. So, it's I don't think it's going to have a huge impact really on salmon numbers or on conservation.
Yeah, but also as well, and we shouldn't forget this. I mean, okay, so it's 20 or 30, let's say 30 years ago. You had a really good chance catching a fish up with you on the opening day there, didn't you, Shane?
Absolutely, yeah. Even more recently than that, and
Okay,
you must
yeah,
remember last year as well that the first salmon in Ireland was landed on the Lennon on the 1st of January. So
yeah. So that's it. But like, let's say even 30 years. Okay, let's say 20 years. That's a really short time
yeah, in the
in
greater.
the broader scheme of things of salmon runs and nature. So, while we're saying at the moment the runs are becoming later, you know, further down the line, the runs may become earlier again. And we can't say that they will or that they won't, but it is quite possible.
Absolutely. I suppose like now we're at the quarter of a century. We're 2025, and looking back here, this is the 25th year of the tagging scheme for salmon. The first salmon that was tagged in
All
Ireland
right.
on the Drowes on 2001 on the 1st of January. The late John Fahey caught a fish very early in the morning. I think
Yeah.
around 1 o'clock. So I suppose it's a good time to have a retrospective and look back. And 25 years sounds like a long time, and maybe when you're younger, it is a long time, but
Yeah.
25 years looking back at that day, I remember it well, and it doesn't seem that long ago at all.
Mm.
Is it night and day to 25 years ago, Shane?
I wouldn't think so. I think it's all like salmon fishing. Everybody looks at rose tinted glasses and the good old
Yeah.
days. I think salmon fishing was never easy. Like maybe you look at some of the pictures, say, we've all seen those pictures of maybe two people getting over 100 fish in places, and the old Victorian black and white photographs of the smallest fish, like the tiddler was 30 pounds, but realistically, as in I'm here now, say, over 25 years, and it's never really been easy. It's very, very variable, and I think every year it's probably getting more variable. Like we had a really good run of fish in 2020. 2023 was very, very poor. We had a rebound last year, not in springfish, which was to be expected because it was the same cohort of multi-sea winter fish that were grills in 2023. So the 2024 spring run was very poor, but then we had a rebound in the 2024 grills. Now they came in late, but they did come in good numbers, and we're very happy with the spawn in here this year.
Yeah, actually, I did want to ask you about that, to touch on 2024, because there did seem to be a good kind of late run of the grills around some of the rivers. Just tell us about the Drowes, how it went for you guys.
Yeah, like it wasn't exceptional. The grills run, as I said, the spring run was below par, but we were concerned really because the grills were normally we would expect them maybe the end of May, beginning of June, and they didn't really arrive in numbers until maybe mid-June, which is late here. And what we did notice also was that while there was numbers of fish there, the river probably didn't fish as well as we would have expected given the number of fish. But look, Melvin fished very well, and we had, there was reports of very good numbers of grills being landed on Melvin, which is good to see. But for some reason, they maybe with the weather conditions or the water conditions, they seem to run pretty fast through to the lake.
Like later, like kind of August, September, were you still getting fish coming in?
Not so much. Well, there was a bit of a run in September. August is usually pretty quiet, but certainly well into July there was good numbers of fish running. And speaking to other anglers there during last season, and coming up here in the first week of opening, some of the fisheries on the foil system had a spectacular year, and it's fantastic to see. And I think everybody's hopeful, and that this year is going to be something similar, maybe. It's interesting that there's such variability year on year and season to season, and it would be very interesting if we could maybe get to the bottom of that and what factors are driving those changes, that we can have such changes from one year to the next in grilse runs, especially.
Traditionally, you always had a grilse run, didn't you?
There would always be a grilse run, even though we're known as a spring salmon river. Absolutely.
And just as a matter of interest, do the grills spawn on any different rivers on from going into Melvin, or do they go to the same rivers that the spring fish run to?
I think that they would be in the same tributaries, like the County River and the Glenanif and the Ballard River above Loch Melvin, and there would be spawning of both spring salmon and grilse in the main river itself. Now that they may spawn in different areas of those individual streams.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
They would be they'd be present in all of them. Yeah.
I was reading somewhere as well, like, are people kind of hopeful as well? Because if you look back to COVID, when the trawlers wouldn't have been out,
yes,
that kind of year, what was that, 2020?
That was 2020, first year of COVID. I think there was a very increased, certainly very noticeable here. When I spoke to you around this time last year, in the opening week, that was my hope that there would be an increased grilse run, because if you remember, 2023 was particularly poor. So I think I certainly was hopeful that after the increased run in 2020, the first year of COVID, that we would see that increase in 2024 last year. And we did see that to a certain extent elsewhere, but I think it was more marked maybe in other fisheries, especially on the foil system and in other places around the country,
It's interesting, isn't it? Like, no, it's just when you say, oh, what's going on? Like, for me, there's like a glaring kind of sign, isn't it? COVID was on, the trawlers weren't out, the deep sea, deep bed fishing wasn't going on. And
there certainly is some factors at sea that we just haven't identified. And 2020 is a case in point. What were the factors that were driving the increased survivability at sea? Like, one thing that is very positive here is we had an electrovision survey on Loch Melvin that took place between 2022 and 2023, and it's a fantastic piece of work. And I would really commend Inland Fisheries and everybody involved in it. It's very comprehensive, and it gives a really good snapshot of the health of Loch Melvin and the catchment at the moment. And it's positive. The results are positive. Like, the Drowes Melvin system is a good producer of smolts. The water quality is going to be enhanced now because there's been a 32 million euro Peace Plus fund announced for the Melvin catchment, the Loch Earn catchment, and Donegal Bay. So that'll enhance water quality. So I think the future prospects should be good. As a driver of smolts to sea, we're in a good position. But the really big problem is the survival of those smolts at sea and the numbers of them that return back to this catchment.
Yeah, we've alluded to that here before, and you have as well, Shane. I mean, it's very much still the sea seems to be a bit of the Wild West. We're not really sure what's going on there, are we?
And we really need to get a handle on that as well, because you can increase smolt numbers. You can do an awful lot of in-stream enhancement, and really drive that. But if the numbers, like looking at some of the reports from Scotland on the Ness and places like that, they're talking about maybe a return rate of as low as 2% in places, and it's
wow.
So yeah, I know here maybe they anecdotally they would maybe we're talking about a 5%, but I think there's a huge variability there, and we need to get to the bottom of what is driving those that variability in those factors.
A book I finished over Christmas. I don't know if you've read it, but I'd recommend anybody listening to read it. It's called End of the Line by Charles Clover. We interviewed Charles Clover in the last Salmon podcast. Charles Clover was the former environment editor of The Telegraph. He went on to co-found the Blue Marine Foundation, which is an incredible organization which basically sets up marine reserves around the world through funding and working with governments, is able to set aside thousands and thousands of kilometers of an ocean that's purely to be reserved as a marine park for no fishing and, trying to keep the oceans. He wrote this book, End of the Line, 20 years ago, which was talking about overfishing in the oceans. It is incredible, in terms of the data and the stats and the information and detail he goes through. This was 20 years ago, where he's just basically going through the different parts of the world's oceans and how it's being raped and pillaged by massive trawlers, how complicit the EU is in all of this. China, of course, is a big, massive factor in it. And like I was saying, that was 20 years ago when he was going through the numbers of, cod, herring, how the stocks just collapse, how the quota system doesn't work, and so we talk about this now, 20 years later, and it's no surprise, if we're saying, Shane, like 1%, 2% in terms of smolts survival, right? Like we could.
Absolutely, yeah. And Tom, you referred to the ocean, as the Wild West, and I think that's very apt. I think that really is the case. There's very little regulation, and we need some safe havens at sea for migrating smolts, and it's not beyond the wit of man to protect the sea fishery. I think it can be done if there was any political will to do so. But like if you look at the quotas that are being given to, say, the pelagic fisheries, they've all, I think, nearly always been above the scientific quotas. So at least with the salmon stocks, were lucky in a way that they're managed on an individual stock basis. That was since 2007, since the end of the driftnet fishery, and they're reasonably well managed on a sustainable level. But that's not the case for a lot of other fish species, and those fisheries are probably having an impact on salmon at sea and on smolt as well.
Exactly, 100%. And the other interesting thing as well is, like, I think the word you used there, Shane, is it's the political will.
Yeah,
that's the difficulty in all this. Like, it's and you just get so frustrated but like, I'd recommend read that book. It's just, and like I said, you're reading it going, holy crap, this is 20 years ago that it was written.
Like in terms of, say, salmon conservation, where you're told to take a triage sort of an approach, that we should tackle what we can tackle first and things like that. But we live in a society at the moment where the political will is there, the political policy is there to tackle climate change. It's a much bigger issue than maybe salmon survival, and what we can do about that. It seems insurmountable, but we're trying to do something about it. Like, the government policy is to commit to keep global warming to within 1.5% of increase in temperature. So if we can enact policies toward that goal, I don't see why we can't enact policies towards the conservation.
Yeah, but then, Shane, and then you have the Department of Agriculture that, as we know, relies on outdated, discredited scientific papers about the damaging effects, or sorry, less damaging effects, they claim, of sea lice from fish farms.
Yeah,
so they're talking out of both sides of their mouth as usual, like, and that's what frustrates the hell out of me the most. Like.
Well, I think once you do, and you often hear this from from politicians, once they go into politics, the first people you've got to deal with, well, not the first people, but you will eventually come up against them, are lobby groups. And some lobby groups are very powerful.
And the civil servants, powerful civil servants. Yes,
and
Prime Minister.
So, you might go in with the best intention of the world, to change the world and everything, but, you hit stone walls everywhere. But like, what I'm trying to say is, like, it's very easy for us to run down. And I agree with you, because you're right. And as soon as you said it, Shane, I agree with you, the political will. But I think sometimes, what I'm trying to say is, I think sometimes the political will is genuinely there, but the obstacles towards it are kind of huge, and we don't see them all the time. And I hadn't thought of civil servants either, Darry, because they're fairly entrenched as well. And, if they're stonewalling
I think bullshit to that as well. And I'll tell you why. Because if you've got a strong enough visionary politician to come in, right, to shake things up and say, no, this is the way we're going to do it, and we're going to do it, right? I hate using this example, right, but rightly or wrongly, whatever you think of Charles Haughey, right, in terms of his corruption, and we all know that was there, but he was somebody who went in and said, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that, and you're going to make it happen. Like, I think of, I don't know, the OEP's free travel, the inheritance around the farms, all that kind of stuff that Haughey was able to bring. He even brought in the 0% tax on the horse breeding to turn Ireland into a world leading horse breeding centre. You need a politician that can come in and say, you know what, I'm going to make it happen. We are developing politicians nowadays who are just careerists, who have no backbone or spine, who are just ambition is just to kind of work within the system and get what they can out of it and move on. There's nobody there who's actually fulfilling kind of visionary kind of ambitions, I think, that comes in and says, this is the way, let's do it. The reason why I'm talking about that is Denmark have banned open pen net farms from their waters. They've just made it happen. That's it. No bullshit. It's going to happen, and that's it. And what I think is a Washington State I or not Washington State, British Columbia, isn't it?
British Columbia.
And I think Washington State actually in America as well. I'd have to check that. They're banning all those. So like, if the will is there and you've got a strong enough personality to do it, it can be done.
And that can be done, but it eventually takes time, though, Dara. What happens there is that you're getting the public will and the public perception behind you and finally behind you. But initially, when you're going in, a lot of guys just turn away because they're going to go, well, this is a battle I'm not going to win. These guys are too powerful, so I'm going to go back. But when public perception and let's say the will of the people, like what you got in Iceland, we've discussed that with the farms as well, probably happening going forward to Denmark, then you get it. But it is very hard. Look, God, I didn't expect myself to be defending politicians here on this one. But, it's not as black and white. And, fair play to you, but the one politician you had to choose was Charles Haughey, not a divisive character by any means.
No, But isn't it terrible to say that actually it's hard to think of politicians that actually get shit done, like, you know what I mean? And in fairness, look, I'm not here to go on a rant about the political system. What I'm just trying to make the point is if somebody has the balls and the vision, they can make it happen. The other thing I also like to say is you look at COVID and I don't know whether it's just human nature or whatever, but when COVID kicked in, when society is presented with an emergency situation that is happening now, it is incredible what society and politicians and governments were able to do to pull in funding, to pull in resources, to pull in the structure, the messaging, the strategy. Suddenly they were able to do everything, whatever was needed to be done was done. It was an emergency situation. And it's almost as if like our brains can only kick in that way. That like, you look at climate change, it's happening drip, drip, drip. Whereas if we were told next week the world's about to explode, I guarantee we'd probably find some way to actually save it. So sorry, that's my New Year's Day rant anyway. So.
The slow pace of innovation, say within fisheries in Ireland, is very frustrating as well. Like we're here in 2025, and since just before opening day, I was issuing paper licenses and tags, the same paper licenses that were used, as I mentioned, for the first tags salmon in Ireland 25 years ago by the late John Fahey, and 25 years before that in 1975, the same paper licenses. We're missing a trick here. Like Ireland is we could be. We have the potential to be world leading when it comes to data on fisheries management. We have some of the best fishery scientists in, even when I was young, Andy Ferguson was here doing a survey on Loch Melvin and the Gillaroo. Groundbreaking stuff, huge potential. We have, there was a guy, I think his name was John Berwick. When he was 17, he created the Ryanair website for £20,000. It's not rocket science. We could have an app-based license system where we could have information on the catches of each individual river in real time. We could have alerts for high temperature, for catch and release not being suitable. We could have so much information that would drive conservation and help us to protect the species that we all care about. But it's not happening because there's zero ambition, there's zero will to do it. We had the strategy for angling development here between 2016 and 2020, and it was a big, a huge initiative. We haven't seen any results in that. We were promised that there was going to be an increase in participation. It was going to be a new era for stakeholders, and we were all going to get together and sing Kumbaya and all the rest, but it didn't happen. And it's very, very disappointing for somebody involved in the fishery and somebody who cares passionately about angling in Ireland that it was such a missed opportunity,
Why didn't it happen?
I think the implementation of it was very poor, and I think then maybe towards the end of the strategy we hit COVID in 2020, and then it seemed to fizzle out. Now there were some good initiatives, don't get me wrong, but I think what happened, a lot of the money that was there for development ended up being used by inland fisheries for projects that they were should have been undertaken anyways. So it's a frustration, but what we don't know is we don't have any retrospective about looking back on reviewing did it work or did it not work. It's just move on to the next thing instead of learning from maybe the mistakes of that program. It's just a very big disappointment.
By the sounds of it, though, what you're saying with the funding that's there, maybe say for the foil catchment, around the kind of the peace kind of programs, there's potential there. Is there in terms of trying to
Well,
tap into there?
the Peace Plus money that I'm speaking about is 32 million has been allocated to Loch Melvin and the Donegal Bay area and Loch Earn. In 2023, we had quite a significant algae bloom on Loch Melvin, which was quite worrying, and we had some local authority treatment plants that were over capacity. And because of these political situation in Northern Ireland, with Stormont being in abeyance, there was no movement on that. But thankfully now there is money there, and those are going to be addressed.
I just want to touch back there. It was very interesting. You just touched on it there, Shane. I never thought of it, but that what you said about the salmon license is very true. It's kind of it's an archaic system. It's
yeah,
it's
I often go through an old coat, and you might find a license. Now, they didn't have to be returned back in the day, but from the 1960s, or you could be cleaning out an old drawer, and there could be one from the 1950s, and you're thinking it's the same thing. It's the only difference is the currency that it's been issued in. Instead of shillings and pence, it's in euros. But literally, it's the same thing, and it's collecting the same information, and it's a complete missed opportunity. And to have that information available for conservation and management decisions in real time would be a huge plus. Like at the moment, what we're relying on is not only information that's a year old, but because of the returns of the salmon licenses, they're totally incomplete. They're maybe we're getting maybe 55% return rate of licenses. So it's when you're trying to make decisions, you should have the best available information available to you. We can do that, but there just doesn't seem to be the will to make that happen.
And that would be a great idea, actually. It's such an obvious one.
Yeah.
It
makes a lot of sense. I never thought of that. It really does, doesn't it?
Yeah. Even with technology now, you could probably nearly do away with the need for scale samples. If the cameras are so good now on smartphones, you could probably take a photograph of a scale, and you could send that off. Because that's an important contribution to finding out information about runs and how long fish have been at sea and all the rest. And even you could potentially do away with the tags themselves if you could take a photograph in real time of a fish, and that's recorded on your app automatically. And there's huge potential there, but it's a long past time that it was implemented.
Tell us, Shane, let's look to 2025. Obviously, like the kind of, are the next few weeks and months kind of, it'll incrementally kind of get a bit busier, and you'll start to see a bit more fish coming into the system.
Yeah, I think so. Like fishing conditions at the moment, apart from the cold weather and the dangerous road conditions and things like that, the river is at a good height. It's, if anything, it's low for the time of year. Opening day itself was, it was the forecast was bad, but it turned out to be quite a nice day to be out. So we'll see, thankfully, an increase in the longer days, and people will probably be more motivated to go out as daylight increases and maybe the weather gets better. I hope that's the hope normally. And then you get reports of a few more fish being seen, and hopefully a few more close encounters, and then hopefully before too long there'll be a fish landed.
Is it harder to sell salmon fishing these days
as
a pursuit?
Yeah, I don't think that anybody should be selling salmon fishing. I think that you should be providing salmon fishing as an opportunity, and you cannot sell it. So you open your door and you hope people will turn up. But I really don't think that trying to you hopefully undersell and over deliver, but I think it's impossible to sell salmon fishing.
So people say, like,
very interesting.
Like you'll have the salmon anglers who come, like, say, from the north or around Ireland. But then you'll have the visitors that come in from Europe and the UK. Are they kind of expecting more of just a kind of relaxing kind of couple of days by the water, staying in one of the houses?
Yeah, well, I suppose what we do notice is that thankfully we have a huge repeat customer base, and not just the same people coming back, but the same families, maybe generation after generation, thankfully, and we're very thankful to them, and they're very loyal to us, and we try and be very loyal to them as well. But we do notice, like, the aging profile of salmon anglers. And it's great to see young people getting involved in the sport, but I think it's a hard sell to get young people involved. Some people, it's a way of life. They've always done it, but to introduce new people and to increase participation is a hard sell. But what we do notice is that maybe some of the people that have been coming over for years, they would have maybe been coming over all guns blazing when they were in their sort of 30s and 40s and 50s, and they're coming back now and they're maybe retired or they're a little bit older, and they'll go through the motions, but they won't be too worried about fishing, or maybe as hard as they would have at one time.
Yeah. We're all just getting old. That's all, Shane.
I think so.
Yeah.
We're looking for recurring the quiet
theme.
life.
Recurring theme.
Another year down.
It certainly is noticeable, though. I say the age profile on the river, it's increasing year by year, and so we need to make fishing, not just salmon fishing, but fishing in general, more attractive to other people, and maybe to get rid of some of the mystique and some of the the barriers to entry, and try and encourage people to get involved, because they are the future. They're like, none of us are going to be around forever, and if we care about the future of salmon and of fishing and of everything else, it's the people who are now maybe 16, 17, 18, they're really going to drive it, and they probably have more energy and more will to fight than maybe some of the older people that are involved in angling, who they're not really going to they've put a lifetime into maybe trying to conserve fish and to fight for salmon, and it's time to maybe pass the mantle on now to younger people.
And that, what I like is, though, as well, as that generation, they're more climate conscious, I think.
Absolutely, and more aware of not just maybe like a salmon as a quarry, but salmon as a species, as something that has a right to be there and should be treated with respect.
Yeah,
as part of our heritage.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's important.
Yeah. Okay, Shane, can I ask you, what age are your kids?
My eldest is 16. I have a 13-year-old and a 10-year-old.
Are they as passionate about the fishing because they grew up beside the river?
Well, they're getting there. Like, I think there's more activities open to young people now than there maybe was when certainly I was growing up. It was fishing and football, and now there's a lot more. There's easier things to do, maybe.
And because I know you, it was tragic circumstances how you ended up having to take over the Drowes Fishery after your dad's death.
That's right. Yeah.
Would you be hoping your kids do something else, or would you like to be passing the Drowes Fishery on into their hands, or it's something that they would do part time? Or
I've only ever seen myself as a custodian, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I'm just here. My family has been here on the banks of the River Drowes, for 300 or 400 years. We had a sawmill. Before we got involved in fishing. So this is the waters of the River Drowes flow through our brains, or flow through our veins, I should say. So I think the river is always going to be a part of my family's life. Whether salmon is always going to be something that we can rely on. I certainly hope to fight for that, but for generations to come, I think they just have to continue to fight. But it's as we talked about earlier, it's not down to individuals. It's something that is going to, it relies on the political will to be there to address some of the issues that can't be addressed at a local level.
Yeah, 100%. You need both, between, like you said, the legacy from your family, and that's going to continue for future generations. I've no doubt about that, as well as the wider issue between the politicians and society. That's something we all have to fight for, I think, going forwards. Tight lines for 2025, Shane.
Tight lines to yourself, Dara, and Tom Doc, and to all your listeners. I hope everybody has a good year and a good season, and stays warm in the current weather.
Exactly, and we'll keep an eye out for whenever the first salmon makes an appearance. Hopefully in the next few days or few weeks, we'll keep an eye out for that, and fingers crossed then for the runs for this year. Thanks again for joining us.
Thanks, Dara. Thanks, Tom.
Our thanks to Shane for joining us on the show. And don't forget to rate, review and follow the Ireland on the Fly podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast from.
Plus, you can keep up to date on IrelandOnTheFly.com as well as on Instagram, and myself and Tom will be back with another episode about the people and places of fly fishing in Ireland.